Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martina James. Thank you for joining us for our monthly webinar series with the Virginia Governors Conference on Aging, sponsored by Virginia Housing. We host this webinar series every fourth Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. We're very excited to have you. We know that people will trickle in as the first couple minutes go on. So as we move into this, we just have a couple reminders that we like to share before we get started. This month we have Bridging Generations. You're joining us for Bridging Generations, Building Civically Engaged Communities with Erin Hill, who's the Civics Education Program Director from Virginia Public Access Project. And as I mentioned, a couple reminders before we get started. The webinar is recorded. We post our recordings each month on the Virginia Governors Conference on Aging YouTube page. You can find all of those webinars at the vgcaging.com website. I will put the link in the chat box once we get started so you can easily access that. But throughout the webinar, we encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A box throughout the webinar so we can keep track of those questions, and we'll answer them towards the end of Erin's presentation. A couple of you submitted questions when you registered. We'll address those questions as well. Also, there is a chat box. If you happen to submit them there too, we'll interact with you as well, but it's easier to keep them straight in that Q&A box if you submit them there. Also, we do have the ability to unmute you and let you engage directly with the presenter. So if you click raise your hand, we can call on you towards the end of the presentation for you to engage directly with Erin. With that, I am going to hand off the presentation to Erin, and we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to this month's presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Martina. All right. If we could just take a moment, take a minute or two to share out where you're coming from today and your name, your organization. And I am curious how you heard about this webinar. What brought you here? And then my last questions are my favorite questions. What's your familiarity with VPAP, the Virginia Public Access Project? Are you brand new to VPAP? Or if you're already a loyal subscriber, which offerings are your favorite? And feel free to share that out in the chat box. All right. I do already see a hand raised. Martina, if we want to allow a verbal introduction.
And it looked like they should be able to enter now. It looked like it was there were some issues with the chat box. So they should be able to go ahead and enter name, location, and organization now and tell us a little bit about themselves. They might not have been able to enter something in the chat box before then. So tell us a little bit about yourselves now. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Got good representation already. Martinsville, New Kent, Roanoke. Oh, Lexington. Oh, I grew up in Rockbridge. Stanton, Madison, Virginia Beach. I love the representation. Norfolk or Martinsville. We love to hear that you are new to VPAP. Welcome. For hearing about the webinar from the email blast. That's great to hear. The Conference on Aging emails are effective. All right. Well, thanks again for taking time out of your day to join us for this webinar. I know that sends a message that you care about civics education and impacting civic engagement in the populations that you serve. So again, thank you for your time. We'll go ahead and get started, but feel free to still, if you're just joining, to introduce yourself and share where you're coming from, and also sort of, your background and familiarity with VPAP. But we'll get to introduce VPAP if you're new. All right. So a bit of history of VPAP, the Virginia Public Access Project, not to be confused with CPAP, although some people say our data can put people to sleep if you need a sleep aid, something to peruse at night. But I think you'll find actually through this webinar quite the contrary, that we have a lot of resourceful data that's engaging, and lots of tools that you can use to be involved in your state and local governments. So we are a nonprofit founded in 1997. It was founded by David Poole, who was a reporter for the Roanoke Times and the Virginian Pilot. Back then, as he was reporting on local government and state government, in order to share out the donations that are made to candidates in Virginia, you'd have to go to the Capitol in Richmond, and you'd have to go to the State Board of Elections and dig around in a filing cabinet to find that information. And we might be thinking, well, why would you want to know that information? So I'll do a little trivia. This session will be very interactive. Are there any campaign finance limits in Virginia? Could just share that out in chat. Is there a limit to how much you can donate to a political candidate in Virginia? You have any takers? Is there a dollar amount? Yeah, Wick Ferry, thank you. It's not yet, right? There's no limits currently. So anything that is a political donation to a candidate in Virginia, anything over $100 is reported. And because of David taking this information and pulling it online, so that was around the time that the internet was, becoming a thing and a useful source, we put that information online. So again, any dollar amount over $100 that you donate to a political candidate in Virginia, that will land you a spot on our website. It is public information, but we just make it easier to find. And we also take that data and make it easier to understand and see and group by things like industry categories to see what industries are, swinging a lot of money around Virginia and impacting our politics. So we started with campaign finance data and reporting that out. And the whole theory is that if we have no limits on donations to political candidates in Virginia, then at minimum, we have to have disclosure laws. We have to be able to make this information public so that our representatives in the state and local government, that they don't become beholden to one industry or one particular donor, that they're not just totally controlled by special interest. But that also requires that we're paying attention, right? And that we're aware of what those donations are and who they're going to, and what that means for us. So you'll see in this webinar ways to learn about that information and see how to make it useful for your specific case. But again, we started out with campaign finance data, but it has evolved to be much, much more. Obviously, we're here now for civics education and making this useful to all Virginians. Frankly, a lot of our user base up to this point has been political insiders, folks who are in advocacy roles or in lobbying organizations or working in the government themselves. But we want to make this information accessible to everyone. So we provide election data as well. We have a daily news aggregation service, VA News. We provide all of the bills that go through the General Assembly every year, including with our most recent civics ed efforts, ways to follow along the process and understand how a bill becomes a law in Virginia. Every week we put out data visuals that make it easier to understand what's going on in your communities and in your state. And prior to COVID, there was an emphasis on reaching others through our civics education efforts. But it wasn't until last year, September of last year, that we launched Civics Navigator. And this is our effort to reach educators of all stripes, so public, private, you name it, even parents, caregivers, after school folks, and in you, folks that are serving the older adult community. We want to equip you with the tools, importantly, nonpartisan tools, so that you can share this information and make sure that your populations that you serve are engaged and informed. And again, this is all from a nonpartisan lens, which is really rare, I think, in modern times, right? Nowadays everything seems to be painted with a political stripe, but we have maintained our nonpartisan stance for almost 30 years now. So, and that's something, we have an annual survey every year. Over 90% of our, usually around 8,000 people that respond across Virginia, they agree that we are in fact nonpartisan. And furthermore, we have members of our board that pull from both sides of the political aisle, and even the panel of advisors that developed Civics Navigator and continue to help guide it. That is co-chaired by former teachers and legislators, a Democrat and a Republican, Kirk Cox and Schuyler Van Valkenburg. So we're continuing to move forward with this nonpartisan information. All right. And just a bit about me. I have the schools that I've taught at here, sort of a visual version. I was a high school social studies teacher for almost 10 years. I taught at Brook Point High School in Stafford, Virginia. Then I moved down to Richmond and taught at Varina High School. Spent my last experience at Code RVA Regional High School, which was a humanities focus. Where we were teaching English and social studies together. It was there where I was also teaching civics and government and teaching about redistricting using VPAP's resources. So it's a beautiful thing to come full circle and be able to contribute to these resources. Yes, I see in the chat, go Mary Wash. And I love meeting fellow Eagles on the call. And then I did take a short stint into the private sector and worked as an agile team lead, working with tech teams and learning a lot about product and program development, which has just helped a ton working with the data team here at VPAP. And those are my kids from Code RVA. Once you're a teacher, those are always your kids. So love them, always have to share. All right, so that's enough about VPAP and me. I want to know about you and how you're feeling. So again, in that chat, if you could share in one word, and I use the mood meter here on a scale of energy and pleasantness, how are you feeling about the political climate right now? Feel free to add a word there. I've got to prefer not to say. Thrilled, uncertain, optimistic, ashamed, exhausted, petrified. Anything in the red? Okay, so that high energy, high anxiety. Yeah, low pleasantness. Uncertain. Yeah, and I speak to teachers almost every day. Yesterday I was in Spotsylvania County delivering a professional development session to teachers on how to use VPAP's resources, and teachers are struggling right now too, dealing with the anxiety of folks in the classroom and their own anxieties about the world right now. The weight of the world is a lot. Anxious, yeah, red zone. All right, that is precisely what I expected to hear. I love that there are some just rose-colored glasses, optimistic folks out there. I'm with you. And I would like by the end of this call, you to have some shred. There's something that you can hitch your emotional wagon to that will give you some confidence and some tools to be able to move forward and share ways that we can get past and work through some of this anxiety. Um, and there is a quote, I looked up who it's attributed to. It's everything from Gretchen Rubin all the way to Enlightenment thinkers. But the gist is the antidote or the solution to anxiety is action. We have to work through our anxiety. So again, we're going to use this session to do just that and to find some calm and confidence in the current climate, regardless of how you're feeling. And assess, and plan for what we can do, how we can take action, both as an individual and also for the constituents or the populations that we serve. So we'll take a look at the civic health needs of our communities, and we'll look at that from sort of all age ranges and roles, and then what we're doing about it, and what VPAP and Civics Navigator is currently doing about it. And the last thing we'll end on, the sort of last third of this, is how can we come together to strengthen this civic health? How do we strengthen our civic knowledge and understanding around state and local government so that, again, we can move forward with confidence? All right. So just to level set one more time, again, the teacher in me is coming out. We'll do a little true false. Let's take a moment to sink in this statement. A functioning representative democracy depends on our civic understanding and involvement. True or false? You can type that in chat, or you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you have reactions. Yeah, true. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So our republic, our constitutional democracy, our representative democracy, however you want to term it, that depends on us knowing how it works and staying informed and paying attention and getting involved. Absolutely. And again, I reiterated our roots here in campaign finance because we really exist for that reason. We're here to help you have access to political information that's nonpartisan so that you can then make the choices that best represent your interest, and maximize your political voice and power. All right. And just one other thing too, I often am asked this when folks ask, what do you do for a living? And I say I'm a civics education program director, and they're like, what is that? What do you mean by civics? And you're right to think it's very broad. It can mean lots of things. At its very essence, if you were to describe it to a 5-year-old, it is just how we live and work together. And so we can get really deep with that, like you would in 12th grade government, and talk about shared and concurrent powers and federalism and reserve powers and all the specific things that go into that. But we can also keep it broad. In its essence, it's just how we work together in our communities. Now, I will add a note here. Our focus at VPAP, because we are the Virginia Public Access Project, is on Virginia. So we are very laser focused on helping folks understand how things like the General Assembly works and things like their local boards work and how those things work together to get things done for Virginians. That's not as to say we don't value what's going on at the national level, but often what's taught in schools and often kind of where we stop is that focus on the national or the federal government. And that's great too. We need federalism, right? They work together. But for us today, our focus is really on state and local government, and really state. If I had to choose one thing, how do we operate as a community of Virginians together well, and following rule of law and things like that together? What does that mean? What does that look like? So when we talk about increasing civic health, we want to increase the understanding of Virginia politics and how to maneuver, how to navigate around it and in it. Cool. If there are any questions, feel free to pop those in chat. Depending on the nature of it, I might answer it as we go, but for sure we'll get to it at the end. We'll weave through. We've got a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to give you as many resources for your toolbox as we go through this. So let's get it. The first step in this is assessing and planning for ourselves, right? There's the whole put on your own oxygen mask. We have to do that for our civic understanding too, especially if we want to teach it to other people. And so I highly recommend, it doesn't have to be right now, but at some point within the next week or so, commit to a timeline, right? We want to make sure we follow through. To go to our resources, vpap.org/civics, and under our resources, we have this personal civic engagement plan. And the first step of that is just knowing where do you stand right now. So you don't have to share this in chat, but there are 10 things here. Kind of give yourself a point for each one, or you could even think of it as a continuum if you wanted, like a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being I never do this, 5 being I do this really well and all the time. And you could tally up your score. And the wherever your scores are lowest, or wherever you don't get a point, that's where we want to work on improving that. So these are all ways to be civically engaged. This is not a comprehensive or exhaustive list, but it's a good starting point. And again, it goes beyond just voting. I think people just stop there and that's enough, or some people don't even get to that point. But it's beyond that. There are ways to be involved. And I tell that to students too. Often we have students who can't vote yet, but there are ways that they can exercise their voice. And I noticed too in the questions that were shared with me ahead of time, one of the questions asked, I'm working with older adults who are like 85 plus, and they have physical limitations getting to places, and how do I get them to participate and be civically engaged? There's so much you can do online and outside of being in a physical space. So we'll touch on that more as we go through. But there's obviously voting, but a big component is staying informed, knowing who represents you, talking about it with people, and contacting those officials, those electeds, attending hearings, participating in the processes, volunteering, donating, or exploring other donations. You can do lots of that on our site. And also, going as far as, demonstrating or taking some sort of action. But kind of think about, where are you right now? And what do you need to be more civically engaged? And I encourage you to think bite-sized, approachable things. It might be, I don't really pay attention to the news as much, or I only see it when I see it scroll on TikTok or on Facebook or on Instagram. So maybe thinking about, how can I get to more reliable sources, or how can I see an array of different voices and kind of see where my blind spots are. Maybe it's something where you don't know as much about how state government works. Maybe you're a Virginia transplant and you're not sure. So there's lots of resources we have that can address that too. But take stock of where you are, take inventory, give yourself some scores. And again, it doesn't have to be now, but soon. Commit to doing that soon. And then identify your interest. What are the issues that you care about? And on our site, we have tons of information for all of these issues and more. So if you really just want to hone in on the environment, any bills related to the environment, you can do that using vpap.org. And then commit to something, set a goal. What are some goals that you could specifically commit to learning? What sort of things about our government politics or our system would you like to learn more about, and make those goals? And bonus points if you share those goals with us. I'd love to hear it so we can help meet them. But as you do this, the next step, and this is the meatiest portion, and if you come away with nothing else today, this is the single most important thing I will share out of all the stuff I'm sharing with you today. So this is, if you were, I don't know, some of you might still be having a late lunch. If you looked away, you want to look back right now. And that is this All Politics is Local legislator lookup tool. And if that sounds like a lot, it's on our homepage. You just scroll down. There's a section where you can enter your address. And when you do that, you'll be able to see these 4 things. who's on your ballot, how many days until the next election is also on there. Where do you vote? And then, so you're probably thinking, okay, Erin, why would I go to VPAP to find that information? I could just go to the Department of Elections, right? You could, but you would be missing those two bottom things that it's an interconnected web of information that tells you not just the current situation on your representatives, but also the past. So you can view the past history of all the bills that your lawmakers have proposed or sponsored or voted on. You can view also your district and your district profile, the history of your district and how it's been redistricted over time. And also, how the demographics of your districts have changed. And again, if you're going back to that assessment of things that you could work on, I'm willing to bet a lot of folks, if you pulled folks off the street, they would probably not even realize that they have representatives in the Virginia General Assembly. Often, again, people think of the US Congress, they stop there. But we have our House of Delegates up for grabs this season, this election. So it's definitely worth checking out. And of course, we have our Virginia Senate. So looking at both of those, knowing who represents you, and here's the big thing, another just enormous piece of data that's helpful to keeping you informed is your political donors near you in your neighborhood. So you can view all of the history of, again, both the people who represent you, where they've taken money from, who they've taken money from, how they've used it. You can view all of the campaign ads without clickbait running down the side. We have so much rich information about how money flows in Virginia politics. So you definitely recommend taking a deep dive on that. And again, those purple bars, when you type in your address, everything is interactive and clickable. So definitely worth checking out. Again, if you do nothing else today, vpap.org, find out who represents you right there on the homepage, and then learn more about those representatives, learn more about the donors near you so that you can get a sense of how power is operating in your community. Continuing that, maybe if you are feeling like, wow, I wasn't a political science major and this isn't really my thing, or I'm embarrassed, I don't even know the basics. You asked earlier are there any campaign finance limits? I had no idea. That's okay. We actually just recently created this link, a web page called Getting Started. So you can click on that. And we have some nice intro questions. So if you're a bit out of practice or you just want a refresher, you can get a sense of what's going on there. I know when I first started doing a deeper dive on campaign finance, it's overwhelming and it's kind of hard to know like what do I need to do with that information. And also there were lots of organizations and political action committees where who are they? How do I know what side of the aisle are they on? And how does this work? And so again, you can get a nice lay of the land with our Getting Started page. And we have that for money in politics. We also have that for following the General Assembly, as well as elections, and of course, Civics Navigator, this program. All right. As you're doing a deeper dive, or maybe you're someone, I'm sure a lot of you, you're already working in state government to some extent, or you're working with agencies, so maybe you're already familiar with this and you're already a political insider. We can still go deeper, right, and plan goals around understanding the levers or levers of power in Virginia. So a lot of that revolves around committees. You can click on this link and see the current committees that we have in the Virginia House and Senate. So again, let's say I really care about healthcare. I can go and see the committees that relate to health, and I can not only see who my representatives are, but who's on those committees that's leading those committees. So who are the chairs? It's important to know not just who represents you, but who's making decisions on the issues that you care most about. So you can easily see that there. And again, you can follow the money. If you click on donations to committee members, it shows you how lobbying is working in Virginia. And you can make that decision for yourself of like to what extent is that a good thing, a bad thing, an okay thing? And what can you do about it? And there's lots that you can do about it. But the first step is knowing, right? We have to know who are the power players and where is the money going. And I do want to, I'm going to zoom out here so you can see what this looks like on our site. So if we go to this committees page, that's here. You can see there's the House committees, the Senate committees, and again, these are all clickable. So if I am really interested in education policy, which I am, I'm going to click on that Education House Committee. There's also one for Senate, Education and Health. And then I can see, okay, who are the members of that committee? What is their partisan bias? And I can see subcommittees. So maybe I'm only interested in K-12. And then I can see the chair of that. So maybe I want to reach out to Shelley. And I can click on that name and I can see, again, this interconnected, dense web of rich information that's going to help me understand how to influence politics in Virginia. So I could see all the bills that that person sponsors. So if I want to propose a bill, I might want to see where they typically sponsor, what has already been proposed and passed. You can look at their voting analysis. Again, what other committees are they on? I might consider reaching out to folks who are not my representative. And then there's a lot of really cool demographic data too about this person. But so this is looking at this legislator as a representative. But you could also look at them as a candidate. So when they were running for office, what is the money situation? Who were their top donors? You can map them. And again, all of this is clickable. You can keep clicking deeper and deeper. It's like a scavenger hunt. And I can look at where this money comes from and what it means. What other candidates are they donating to? There's a lot of, again, that rich interconnected web of information. All right. If you want to take just a broad sweep, you can also look at generally the top donors in Virginia. And you can view that by year, going all the way back to 1997. Or you can view it with just this year. You can also view it. And we take an extra step when we collect the data on the campaign finance reports, and we code them by industry. So you can see which interest groups are advocating for themselves the most, and who and how, and what they're spending that money on. And again, all of this is clickable so that you can keep digging deeper into what that means for you, or if you're approaching it from an issue area that you care about. All righty, let's head back over to the main presentation. All right, again, we're thinking, how do I plan for myself? Action is the antidote to anxiety, right? We've got all these resources. I encourage you to take some time in the near future to commit to exploring some of these digital resources from your perspective in your locality, and also looking generally at the trends across Virginia. Again, there's so much information to explore. That could just be the main part of your engagement plan right now. If you feel like you need more of a refresher, we've got lots of resources that we share with educators across the state, and these are more introductory resources, so you might consider looking at that yourself. Or if you're a parent or a grandparent, you could share this with your young people too, and get them more aware about what's going on in their communities. All right, and these are all searchable by grade level, by topic. We have more interactive sources, we have downloadable files, and it's keyword searchable. So if you just want to look up resources for the General Assembly or just for the governor, you can do that on our civics resources. All right, I know this is a lot. A few more resources because I want you again to have so many things in your toolbox to pull upon depending on what your needs are. If one of your areas of growth is paying attention to news sources, particularly local news sources across the state, and so that you can kind of read across different sources and find the consensus, highly recommend subscribing to VA News. That is our daily news aggregation service. And you can search things there by topic too. Or if you just want to look at the archive, you can look at all of the articles that we've shared about data centers or the school cell phone bill, any of those sort of things. It's all on there and easy to search. Or you could just receive it in your inbox every day. I also recommend, as we're coming up on the November election, we also have an early voting dashboard. You can see election information and results, and that's all the way down to your local offices like school board. We share all levels. And it's all free and without clickbait running down the sides of your browser. It's clean, clear information that is there for you to do with what you want and hopefully be civically engaged. And again, we also produce those visuals almost weekly. And it's not just political visuals. We do some demographic data too, like population. We pull upon some other data sources for that. And then if you're ready to take action or that's a part of your civic engagement plan, we do have a citizens guide where we help you get past the gatekeepers and get to know those legislative aides, because those are often the people you need to know before you can talk to your representative. If you want to see them in person, that's an option, but we give you their contact information and their staff members' contact information. We also have a General Assembly app. So you can view that if you come to Richmond and just pull that up and you can see where they're located in the General Assembly building. So lots of resources there if you want to get involved, whether that's from afar, virtually, or in person. All right, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge the plethora of resources that we do have from the state, and that a lot of people don't know about. So every issue pretty much has an advocacy group, so you can look up different lobbying organizations for that. But also every government issue has an agency. So obviously lots of you are from our area agencies on aging, but there's an agency for almost any topic that you might care about. So recommend clicking through that and seeing, finding the issues you care about and finding when those committees or boards will meet and participating. That's all published. You can see, view a lot of that on the Commonwealth calendar as well. If you want to dig more into your local government, you can look up your county, city or town charter, all sorts of stuff. Again, if you want to do a deeper dive, I just wanted to link those resources for you. And these are all listed in that personal civic engagement plan. So don't feel like you have to save all these right now. In the essence of time, I'm going to kind of brush over this, but committing to a plan, making it measurable, achievable, time-bound, those SMART goals. Also reflecting sort of what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and writing that down is a huge, important first step to being civically engaged as an individual in Virginia. All right, so that's the personal civic engagement plan and a way to assess and plan for it. Hopefully even that alone is easing some of that anxiety. I'm going to take a moment to reiterate the problem space, if you will, for civic health in Virginia. And then we'll wrap it up with what else we can do about it, specifically as members of our organizations, the folks that are on the call. So in terms of the problem statement and sort of where we are right now with civic understanding and understanding of how state and local government works, we often talk with lawmakers, and when we do, they frequently complain to us that their constituents reach out to them for issues they have no control over. And while they hear them and acknowledge them, it's frustrating because they want to be able to help you with things they can actually help you with within their locus of control. So part of that is for us Virginians understanding, again, those committees, what things are actually what issues are things we can actually affect at the state level versus the local level? Where is there overlap? So education, there's a huge need for educating ourselves and our communities about at what level government plays a role in your life and for what types of issues. We also know that, again, if you were to poll an ordinary person on the street, I'm willing to bet very few of them would know that the General Assembly session starts in January and would know that there are even in odd years and shorter and longer sessions and that we have a biennial budget process. These are all things you need to know in order to affect it, right? In order to understand what's going on. So again, as a Civics Navigator at VPAP, we're working to affect this, but currently this is a struggle. And our legislators are telling us it's a struggle. This is a struggle. All right. In K-12, I could do a whole session on the civic need. That is the reason why Civics Navigator exists, at least initially, is this focus on teachers. We believe that teachers are a force multiplier. And so if we educate teachers on how state and local government works, they then share that with their students, who then share that with their family. And ultimately that creates a more stronger sense of civic understanding in Virginia. But up to this point, there has been a consistent lack of teacher training and resources around Virginia civics. Again, even, in your advanced classes, folks who are doing the AP test or the IB test, they're so focused on the federal government. That's what's tested, that often state and local is left to the end of the year. And for seniors in government, they are checked out. So when it's time to learn about Virginia General Assembly, they're like, when's beach week? So there are ways, obviously, we can teach our young people civics as it's relevant and meaningful to them. Same thing with the civics is often taught in 7th or 8th grade. That is the SOL tested course. So we are teaching it, but it's a struggle to get a young adolescent, to connect to that in a meaningful way, especially when it's tested with a sort of kill and drill rote memorization facts approach instead of an experiential approach, and taking a middle schooler to the General Assembly to see the process in action, or giving them points to go to that school board meeting and see the process. So there's lots we can do to incentivize experiential learning, and there's lots we can do to enhance how we're teaching the current standards. We do have a civics strand throughout K through 12 social studies standards. There's a huge need for more resources to teach it well, and to create a community around that. And so Civics Navigator is committed to doing that. And we are also working with other organizations that are doing similar things as well, where we're each really diving into our niche. So we're really focused on supporting teachers with state and local government bite-sized resources that are real world, engaging, and fun. But ultimately, it's still a struggle, right? This is the problem space. And also it's unfortunate that civics is often combined to just that 7th and 12th grade course, despite the civics strand, but also that it's not taught when it could be in math, where we could talk about data and context, real world data, or computer science, which is now a required course in Virginia. Again, that we could bring in that civic data there, have a conversation about it. you're here for, I assume, most of you based on the registrations, what is the need in the older adult community? So in relying on that Virginia community assessment for older adults, we see that civic engagement is a challenge. And we see that just over 1 in 4 older adults cited civic engagement challenges. And it's up there with your sort of life or death, like rubber hits the road situation of, independent living and housing and mental health. But I think these are interrelated too, right? When we look at the focus group themes from that VCU Center on Aging report, there were lots of folks who expressed that they didn't know who or where to get information or complain to, is how it was phrased. They also felt like electeds didn't pay as much attention to them as they were to K-12 populations, despite the fact that older adults vote at the highest rate. But that, again, that maybe they're still not fully hearing them. Of course, there's the stereotypes for older adults, and that emerges from all sides too, from our youth populations as well, as we're stereotyping each other. And so there's this need to sort of redefine what old age means. And there's no surprise that folks feel stereotyped when they're aging in place, but without that rich age range. So they're aging in place by themselves in isolation, whether it's rural isolation or it's just they're with other older adults in suburban communities or urban communities. It's just they're staying together. And so there is an immense need to be able to not only learn about and understand civics and how to navigate the space, but as we're doing that, we believe that we can do that while also supporting the community and having young folks interacting with our older adults. And as they do that, they're less likely to stereotype them. And the older folks can feel appreciated for the knowledge that they have that they can impart on youth. Youth can share how to access all of these digital tools. So if you have someone who's an older adult in a rural community, or maybe they just don't have the transportation to get to Richmond, you could have a middle school civics student teaching that older adult how to use the tools online to do a public testimony in the General Assembly just from the comfort of their home. So we can be helping each other better, right? Working smarter and not harder on solving these issues, because they are interconnected. All right. And if I haven't sold this enough, just in terms of the problem space, we have a powerful, and this is a VPAP classic. This was a part of our Civics Whiz visuals, which was originally funded by the Claude Moore Foundation, that shows this voter participation. And I think it's worth taking a moment. We have a video of this too, but just to show you, we have almost 9 million people in Virginia, and each of those little people represents 100,000 people. Over 6 million eligible voters, but we see that not all of those who are eligible to vote. And during presidential elections, a lot of people vote. It's about equal voters, non-voters. During a gubernatorial election like we have this year, there are fewer voters compared to non-voters. During a midterm US House election, even fewer voters. And during a General Assembly election, just an abysmal 2.5 million. I know that sounds like a lot, but compared to the eligible voters, that's incredibly disappointing, right? So we know that folks aren't participating. And we know too, there's a lot of studies on understanding how it works leads to a likelihood that you'll participate more in the process. So perhaps I made you feel calm with the civic action plan. Maybe I've rattled you a bit with the problem space. I'm going to lift you up before we close out today, which is obviously there's a clear need for civics education across the lifespan. And we're doing something about it. So we're chipping away at that enormous glacier of civic understanding in Virginia. And we're not doing it alone either. But for VPAP Civic Navigator, we launched last September, and so far we've reached over 1,000 educators all across Virginia. It's our goal to reach folks equitably across the state. And we've been through 35 presentations and counting, conferences, events, you name it. We're teaching folks how to use these resources, how to weave in civics across the content areas, how to teach media literacy, how to discern what you're reading in the news, and how to find the consensus and read across sources using our VA news tool. We're teaching folks, of course, how to track bills and issues that matter to them. And then, just like we've done with you today, starting to plan for our civic learning and engagement. So far, we have directly served 24 school divisions in Virginia. Of the 132, this is where we have a direct contact, and we have done or are doing some professional development sessions with them. This map does not show we are connected with the Home Educators Association of Virginia, so we're also reaching homeschooled students, and we also serve private schools as well. Again, anyone who wants to learn about civics in Virginia, we are here for you. And we recognize that we're not alone in this work, but we are serving a very specific niche, which is that state and local government piece. And providing that information for folks, that nonpartisan information. But we are partnered with over 21 organizations, and these are at all different levels. This is K-12, this is higher ed, and even the adult learners. And again, we want to make sure that we're operating well, knowing that this is how we can reach more people effectively. And speaking of coalition building and working with other organizations, I want to leave you with this final ask, and also support. Already today, hopefully you've taken some things that you can share with VPAP Civics Navigator with your programs. That alone will increase our civic understanding and health. If you'd like support with that, please reach out to me. I have my email address at the end here. I would love to come in and share with your programs or share with your program leads, so that they can share and we can do a sort of train the trainer model so that it's most effective. But I think long term, and the most powerful thing would be when we take about that needs assessment. So it's not just civic engagement. It's being able to stereotype each other less and being able to age in place with people of all ages. We can do two things at once, or beat a dead horse, as they say, by pairing our educator network and our students with your older adult populations. I think that would be the most powerful way for folks to learn about each other while also learning about how state and local politics work and how to engage in it. And ultimately, that would increase our cross-generational or intergenerational civic dialogue with each other, and hopefully make the whole political climate a little less anxiety inducing, as you all said at the start. So again, I know we have 5 minutes left. I'm definitely going to take questions. But before you leave, I would ask if you want to scan the QR code and you can take that one question survey. It'll also be linked in the chat. Subscribe to our resources, and do reach out if you'd like to partner with Civics Navigator and older adults, and adding in students, so we could pair our middle and high school students that are learning civics with our older adults who can impart all of their wisdom on them. And I think we would all be better off for it.
Well, thank you, Erin. We are happy to take any questions. And we have more of a comment at the moment. I see a great opportunity for high school students to earn extra credit by going into older adult communities to share civics information as an update or refresher for them. Erin, I think those are some great opportunities for partnerships there. You have another question from Joyce Williams. Joyce, it's always wonderful to hear from you. Do you add city info tailored for training in specific cities?
Oh yes, just yesterday when I was in Spotsylvania, um, we were looking at campaign finance data, and I do a deep dive on the region. Thankfully, I lived in Fredericksburg for a while when I was at Mary Washington and taught there, but we looked at donors. One of the big donors is Larry Silver, who designed Carl D. Silver Parkway, which is that big Central Park place you see off of 95. But is a massive political donor. So it was interesting to make that really hyper local connection to that political information. And then letting folks, decide what they want to do with that. But we definitely tailor it to your specific region and needs. Another question that we got ahead of time that I also wanted to address before we leave is how we're reaching deaf and hard of hearing populations and how we plan for that. I think first off, that's an incredibly important thing to do. From an educator perspective, we have something called individualized education plans, or IEPs and 504s, where we provide accommodations to people with special needs, and provide them with the supports they need to be able to learn. It's unfortunate as we become adults, we kind of lose that, right? Adults don't all come with their IEPs and their specific plans. So it's important for us as program leads to plan for those populations and plan with that in mind. I know a key part of dealing with that in education is making sure that folks are in what we call the least restrictive environment. So how do we bring folks to the table, make sure everyone has a seat at the table, but that they're able to be there and act with confidence. So as program leads, I think it's important for us to plan for having any sort of services, whether that's translation services available when we do programming, and asking what's needed. It's one thing of what we expect, but it's also just another to be a caring human and asking folks what they need and giving and making sure that we have that for them in these sort of programs.
Erin, I think, we had another question that came from an individual, and it said, how can we be effective in protests without endangering ourselves individually, and how may 85-year-olds with physical limitations be effective behind the scenes? And I would encourage advocacy, protests. However, you as an individual would like to advocate for your beliefs, communities, those things that are most important to you. And if you're an individual who, I think at any age, you need to be safe in the way you're advocating for the the resources and services that are most important to you. And if that includes just making phone calls, if it includes sending emails, writing postcards, a handwritten letter to an elected official is always incredibly impactful. If you're somebody who can't get out in the community and go into a legislator's office or to a community event, I would say doing advocacy that is handwritten or making phone calls or reaching out to a local advocacy network and saying, how can I support your efforts? There are a lot of different resources there, and we're happy to, connect you with some of those different larger advocacy networks. As myself, I told Erin I'd be happy to help answer some of those questions. I also serve as the legislative liaison for the Virginia Association of Area Agencies on Aging while managing the Virginia Governor's Conference on Aging. So happy to be a resource there. With that, I don't have any questions unless anybody else has any other questions. But as we always do, this webinar is recorded. Erin's contact information, along with her slides and all of her supporting resources, will be provided to you within the next 48 hours. Gives us time to make sure that the webinar is, cleaned up and we make it look nice and posted and get you all the resources that you all need. And then if you all have any questions, you can reach out to her directly. You can reach out to our team at the Governor's Conference on Aging. And as always, if you all have any questions about future webinars, if you're interested in presenting, or you have a topic that you'd like to hear more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So again, Erin, thank you so much for presenting. I think all of this is very timely and very important. And we look forward to seeing you all again next month.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.